Hello and welcome all my friends to GameGuru, the return. The return of the Twitch broadcasts after so many long relaxing sleeps that I've had. But now I'm back to assault you once more with a lot of dribble and ranting and waffling. Hopefully you can glean a few gems here and there and ultimately make your game making adventure all the more interesting. So, some of you may have heard that I've been working on an update. It's been taking forever, and you thought it would be the release of the Easy Building Editor. Well, I am here to introduce an update that precedes it, on the grounds that there were many people in the community who absolutely and quite rightly felt there was a need for some core implementations. What I mean by that is functionality that many deem essential in order to complete a game project and get it out there into the world. That's not to say that EBE has been shelved. It hasn't. It's almost ready for a version 1 release. I just need to put it through the same level of care that I've put this latest update, the version 1.133, through its paces with our beta team. I would have released it about 2 weeks ago, but some really great feedback from the beta team gave me pause and allowed me to make those fixes, and then you're going to have a much more solid update going out hopefully this week. Hopefully, if nothing really horrible comes back from the internal testers, then I'll be setting that to release and you can all have a play at it. I'm even thinking there's a possibility I could set it up as a sort of a beta version that you can get access to sort of early. We've already got a tag for it, like a public preview. I might put it up as that first, just to make sure that I'm not ruining people's current game projects with no course to return to an earlier version. Which of course we've solved anyway, because we've got versions for that. So without further ado, and my introduction is by way of a small apology for you having to wait so long between broadcasts. But it's been a little bit crazy around here at TGC, and I've just managed to wrestle back enough time to create this broadcast for you. Again, the ritual will be let's try and aim for 30 minutes and watch how Lee waffles on for a whole hour. But I think 30 minutes is a nice sort of amount of time, because if you give Lee an hour, it'll probably take 2, and that's just mostly filler. So what I want to demonstrate today is this big text document, really boring, but lots of all these things, line 3 through to line 61. So what would that be? About 57 fixes in this minor version 1.133 update, but some real pearls, some real nice things in here that I hope you'll enjoy. So what I'm going to do is just demonstrate some of them, the ones that I can actually show quite well in the GameGuru editor, and hopefully if you've got any questions you can pose them throughout this broadcast for those who are joining us live. Now, I have restructured my system slightly and lost all the ability to have multi-monitor support or a separate computer running a browser. So what you're going to have to find that I'm doing is switching over to this, which is a screen that you're seeing, and then you probably get a mirrored screen going into the center of the broadcast. But at the right side of my screen that you see now is the one where you can pose your questions. So if you do have any, just post them in the live chat, and I'll switch to it from time to time and see if you've got any questions about what I'm rabbiting on about. So we'll all find this familiar. This is the version 1.133 that's currently in beta, almost ready to be released. And it has all of these things in it, and I'm just going to read quickly through, and then when I see one that I think you'll be interested in, then I can demonstrate a little bit of it. Obviously optimization is very difficult to impress upon you unless you've got a side-by-side comparison. Needless to say that there has been some optimizations that have been going on in the background. Limited AI to only control bots within 200 unit range. There's a fix further down which actually stabilizes that, but essentially it all speaks to performance. I did some performance analysis on Morning Mountain Stroll, noticed that all the AI bots were going away and thinking about stuff, and it was rather unnecessary because you only see these soldiers in waves, so I have the entire map all thinking about paths. So there's been some work there to make that performance optimization. Occluder with predictive occlusion. I'll show you what that means. But it was really just to stop that popping effect that you see in previous versions of GameGuru, and indeed some professional AAA games you see the popping, and I thought, oh my god, it's like I'm solving things that I haven't even been bothered with by the professional lot. Of course I'm not professional, I'm the complete opposite of professional. So I'm going to create a wall, a big wall, and I put one here, and I put one here, and I run it. So the idea of occlusion, as you may know, is that if you are standing in front of a big wall, you don't need to draw the little objects behind it. Thus, less draw calls means you don't have to worry about performance. So, stood behind the wall, you can see 53 things are being drawn. You see draw calls at the bottom, 53. And if you come out from hiding place, it's now 97. See, I'm not even drawing those barrels. So the thing that predictive occlusion was, is if you actually move side to side really quickly, you would have had a situation where a barrel was invisible for one cycle and then it would pop into view. Same with that way. So what actually happens is the camera is sort of, the occluder, is sent ahead in the vector of your movement. So it gets a chance to see the barrels before you actually see the barrels, make them appear, so the cycle that they should appear, they do appear. And that's called predictive occlusion. And it's a term I've just made up. I'm sure it already exists in some other term. But essentially what that does, it improves your visual experience because you're not having objects pop out of nowhere. The light ray render bug, yes. This was one that caused one of our beta testers to think the latest update actually was worse performance. What actually is the case is if you've got a level that doesn't use terrain, so you've actually physically switched terrain off, it would also switch the light ray render off. Now light rays are peculiar things, but I'll show you where it lives. And the bug fix was, even when terrain is switched off, light rays continue to work. But here's a warning. Light rays are expensive. They actually are re-rendering most of the scene again. And so you should be careful when using this slider here, the light rays, and its cousins, length, quality, and decay. You see I can control the quality and the length of the shadows, sorry, the light rays, that it's taking performance. You know, it's taking a hit. If I just show you the performance of this one, which is 328 with light rays on, and slightly higher with light rays off. That's because I've got a juicy monster graphics card. If you're render bound, so there's a lot of stuff your GPU has to do and not enough time to do it in, you're going to see a big hit in your performance there. So just be aware of that. As we fix bugs, functionality you were depending on may look like you're actually getting a performance degradation. It's just all the systems coming online and all working 100% as they should. So that's something to be aware of, that if you actually decide that you don't want terrain anymore, so you can switch it off, and you can also do that in a Lua script, then obviously you can see we're with 350, now we're 550 or thereabouts. Switching off terrain is a great performance booster. Just remember to put a floor in, otherwise your level's going to look a little odd. How do you put a floor in? Well, you go to fixtures and there's some nice pieces of floor around here. So example, I can drop that in there and I'll run it again. It probably might switch the terrain back on. It's quite, this is just a debug thing that I have here. But you would probably put it in a script. So there you go. We got rid of the terrain, but you can still have a floor, and it still sounds like you're walking on concrete, or if you're walking on wood and metal, it will reflect that as well. In fact, in some ways, it's slightly better than the terrain. That doesn't really have materials for the different textures you paint with, but when you actually have proper entities for floors, you've now got your footfalls in the correct material. Nice little tip if you want more speed and more features. So moving back to the list. Added a secret backdoor password for restricted content mode. You will be amazed how many people entered a password to go into restricted content mode, then forgot the password, and then emailed us technical support asking what the password is. It's like, how would we know? You created the password, and we've been asking people to delete the parent control or restricted content mode files directly in the root folder. It's like, oh, who asks people to go into the root folder to delete files except us? So I've got a little backdoor. If you tap 9119, it's a universal password. It will unlock your forgotten password, and then you can get back to having your weapons and your violence and stuff. But for people who have children, please don't tell them this number. Because they'll just get past your password and then all is for naught. Hopefully though, it'll be remaining between you, me, and anyone that watches this broadcast on YouTube. So moving on, when playing a video in Standalone, left click now ends the video as designed. Yeah, it worked in test mode, but when you went to Standalone, you would click, 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 and the video wouldn't end. I mean, it's not really good for your game. That bug's been fixed. Yeah, some new fields. I really want to show these off because I like them. And to demonstrate, I'm going to load up Asylum, which has also benefited from some slight improvements, not least of which some zombie work that we've done with the sound effects. But specifically, I want to show something that the Asylum will be able to show off very well. If I just chop all the roofs off using the tab button, grab this zombie, which usually is the first zombie you encounter, and bring him into the room with us. Scary, I know, but useful to demonstrate. One of the first things you may have noticed in a previous version of GameGuru is that the Asylum zombies would have their feet sinking through the floor. Little naughty. That bug's been fixed. That's one of the later bugs that have been fixed. But I've also added some fields, and I just wanted to show you our zombie has gone. It didn't like being moved. Fair enough. I'll show you another zombie. It's out this door. This door. So there's a zombie here, and you notice his feet's no longer stuck into the floor, and he's a bit more active. And let me get this shotgun. And he doesn't fall through the floor when you shoot him. So a very respectable performance for a zombie. Now I want to show you some of the new fields that we've got. And you'll notice right away there's one at the top called specular. That would allow you to modulate whatever the global specular term is. And you can override these with overexposure values as well. So you can make something look extremely shiny. You've also got this, which is why I ran the demo in the first place, end collision. When you set it to yes, it retains its collision with the environment around it. So if that zombie fell forward, it would fall onto that bag of, and it would just fall off. Great. But there's been a request that sometimes when you go to ragdoll, you want to switch collision off so you can run through the ragdolls. So you can set end collision to no, and it would actually not have the player constantly climb over piles of dead zombies. You can just run through them, and that actually creates a smoother game dynamic. There's much more fluidity going on in your games. You'll also notice at the bottom of the performance properties panel, you've got a lot more than 2 sounds now. You've actually got 5 sound slots, and we've taken advantage of that. As you can see here, you've now got lots of different sounds all tied to the different kinds of zombies. So there's a lot more sound effects. If you actually go to the audio bank I'll go into this where I am and go to zombies. You'll now notice, I think there was like 4 in the last one, but now we've got a lot more variety. Fat zombies and thin zombies and female zombies and all the rest of it. A lot more hit noises and improved zombie scripts as well to go with it, as well as improved behaviour, improved sound effects, etc, etc. So if I just wipe that out, I just want to show you the overexposure thing on specular, because you might not know what I'm talking about until I demonstrate it with a volunteer fat zombie, which is this guy. The reason I pick him is I know he's got a bit of a specular map, So you default to 100. Now I'll show you what that means first. And I don't want him to keep munching my brains. So I'm going to set him to a neutral AI. And I don't want to kill him, so I'll just run. If I wanted to kill him, I would have needed a gun. But I don't need a gun for this one. So, first thing we do, you see he's not attacking me. It's a friendly zombie. I set all my shaders to highest. I'm wondering whether to set these to highest by default, so anyone who gets GameGuru for the first time gets the best looking graphics. I think a lot of people just see it on medium, don't like it, and then write a nasty review. So if we go to specular full, you'll actually see that there's a little bit of sort of little specular light bounce going off his belly. I can show it more if I drop down ambience, increase that. If I move specular, you see that's the contribution for specular. You know, it's subtle, which is what you want. You don't want to really overdo specular. However, if you wanted now to overdo specular, you can. So if instead of 100, which is done in percentages, let's say 1,000. Apply that and rerun. Can anyone guess what's going to happen? You can see it already, can't you? He looks like a metal zombie. So it's a cheap trick. It's one of the oldest, cheapest tricks in the graphics card book. But you can actually set any entity to a really high specular value, and you'll give that's extreme overexposure on specular. Obviously, this is just a placeholder for the time when we add static and dynamic cube mapping per entity within the world, in which case you'll be able to have static and dynamic reflections off the metal, which is how metal would react. But it's pretty decent, you know, and a lot of games even still use just an overexposed specular in order to fool you into thinking it's some shiny metal or some shiny plastic or whatever it happens to be. But there you go. People have been wanting a per entity specular adjustment, and now you've got it. So that's what that one means. You've got new occluder and occludee fields. That pretty much goes back to that barrel demonstration I was talking about before. Some people wanted full control over what gets occluded and who occludes it. For example, if I put a shovel down here, you know, and you wanted the shovel to not hide the zombie because it's a stupid shape, you could just select properties. Are you an occluder? No. There is no way that spade could ever hide anything behind it, as you would want. But by default, the engine tries to get everything to be an occluder and everything to be occludee, except what's specified in the FPE file. So that's what it's for. You can specify things that you never want to hide anything else, and let's say you never want this zombie to be ever occluded. Actually, you can't do it with characters. I've excluded that because you really want the system to handle the occlusion on that point, because they're animated, they're moving about all the time, and there's some extra things to think about. But if you pick a static one, like you never want that to be occluded for some reason, then you can say you will never be an occludee. So you set that to no, and then that will never be hidden with the occluder system. And that's also useful for things like doors, which can change the size as they open up. You know, double doors that open up wide, they change the size of their initial bound area, and you suddenly find that a door is being switched into invisible mode because it thinks it's an occludee. So you can actually switch off in those particular cases. So that's why the occludee flag is there for you. We've added new ability to set a shader in your sky spec. Now that's particularly useful for something that you got in the recent expansion pack, which I'm really proud of, and we got a lot of good kudos from the community. Really like the extra 2.8 gigabytes of graphics, but we still actually, as a result of releasing 2.8 gigabytes of extra game assets, we actually got more negative reviews. Go figure. I have absolutely no idea. Maybe we should just start removing stuff from GameGuru, and then we get a glowing series of reviews because there's literally nothing wrong with the blank screen that's left. Who knows? But maybe, you know, it's just one of these blips that we just have to ride through. I'm trying to find, and it's not popping into my consciousness. I think it's because this is my developer version rather than the Steam version, so I probably don't have it. But if you look for it, you will actually find the a brand new level called Galaxy Seed. And the Galaxy Seed uses a sky, and the sky is a very specific requirement, i.e. it requires its own shader because it does some clever, wonderful, unique things. Thanks from a brilliant artist, Rolfe, who produced that. And the shader now works. So if I go into... I will only be able to show you it through the Steam one. So I'm going to go into Steam folder and go into Skybank, and then it should be somewhere around here. Rolfe, Evening Dark Sun. It might be Dark Sun, Specular. No, that's probably one of his older skies. So maybe it's Galaxy Seed. Yeah, it is Galaxy Seed. And we're going to Sky Spec. You'll see that's a new field called Sky Shader equals skyscroll.fx. And that shader is applied to the sky. So if you wanted to have different kinds of sky spheres or sky boxes and your own shader, now you can do that with this feature. And it should really help us push the envelope when it comes to different kinds of sky stuffs. Lure command, set player run. Somebody wanted the ability to disable the ability for players to run. A typical scenario for that would be if you've just collected something into your inventory, like a thermonuclear warhead, and you can't carry it around and run at the same time. So you've got something inside the script now which can switch off your ability to run, either temporarily or permanently. As I said before, we've got new sounds for our zombies and some extra slots to put them in. I know some people are going to want more than 5 sound slots, but we've also got, if you remember a previous update, we've got Load Global Sound, which allows you to have a near infinite number of additional sounds to then use within your entities. So hopefully we've covered sounds at least for the moment. Some little bugs that's been fixed, some improvements to some of the AI. I don't want to go through everyone, see there's quite a lot, and we are quickly running up to the half-hour mark. So any fixes I'll just give lip service to. That's something that I can demonstrate really nice within the IDE. More script improvements, increase the ferocity of the attack and the manoeuvres. So you're getting a taste of better AI, but we'll really do AI properly after the EBE. You know, I rather like the idea that some of the existing games, like you fire a rocket at one of the soldiers, they dive out of the way, so they don't just stand there and get blown up. Little things like that, where you shoot one of 2 guys and the other guy immediately dives for a better position to hide. Little touches like that. I mean, mostly scriptable. You could do that right now, but wouldn't it be great if you could just drop a character in and they embody that sort of self-preservation and then run around, and it just makes shooting them a little bit more fun. It sounds a little bit sadistic, but I think you're going to get that more enriched game experience with those few easy little tweaks. But the big job of the AI after the EBE work, the Easy Building Editor, is pathfinding. Improved ways that enemies can actually stand not just on the floor, but on balconies and on first and second and third floors and on roofs, and be able to negotiate stairs and ladders and things like that. That's the real meat of the AI work and what's going to give us a lot of headaches in days to come. Fixed issue of the camera locking third person, locking to itself. Yeah, there are some scenarios where it's a really clever feature of the third person where if you fire, say, the fireball, it will kind of, if you're close enough, just about, it will lock in on the enemy and the fireball will fire at that. But there was this strange bug where if you could strangely lock onto yourself, it would fire the fireball at itself. And so it would look really, really weird if you locked the camera into a top-down perspective. So that bug's been fixed. Yeah, more little fixes around some of the lure commands. Ignore material that was required if you were wanting to do like a weapon that's like a camera or a raycast sort of situation, like you want to open a door. You don't really want a bullet splash to actually happen where you click. It actually has been in a previous version, but it wasn't really advertised, so I thought I'd advertise it here. Third button activating level 1 to level 2. Yeah, you saw that in the Easter game, so that's been fixed. Ensure light map updated. Every time I change the entity profile or the element profile, it's easy to forget to update the light mapper, which depends on those profiles when it exports all the geometry back out, so it can be loaded into your standalone. And in the following lure commands, right, this was a big big request. It's been in my inbox forever, and it actually wasn't that much work to do. It was just a lot of donkey work of creating the functions and then mapping them out. But essentially they drop directly onto the statistics of the existing weapons. Nothing's really been added. I've just given you more control over these values within Lua script. So if I drop in a weapon like the Magnum and show you its properties, you can see you've got things like damage accuracy, reload quantity, fire iterations, range drop off, spotlighting, but you can only set them here. So once you've set them here, that will be it. So you can imagine how difficult it will be with only a finite number of weapons to give people the ability to play a progress, to soup up your weapons and create upgrades along the way, rather than just keep giving them, here's another weapon, here's another weapon. Wouldn't you just have to have one weapon and then soup it up from time to time with little bonuses? Well, this is sort of one of the first steps to allow you to do that, and another move more towards Lua scripting as a solution for replacing a lot of these hard-coded elements, like you can only change it in entity properties. Now you can create a script that can adjust these. So if you look back at the commands, you've both got gets and sets. So you can actually get what already exists, and then you can set it with an additional 5 or an additional 10. And then up here, these are the magic ones. These will allow you to find out what weapon you've already got in your hand. It will allow you to grab the weapon ID from a string. So if you know your weapon's called, modern/Colt 1911, you can actually get the ID of that, and it's the ID you use to change the stats and the attributes of those weapons. So that's how all those commands work. And for anyone who wants to create a really in-depth game with lots of player progress and weapon upgrading, those are the commands for you. So hopefully we'll get to see some cool things happen in the next couple of months with those commands. So we've released version 1.133, that is. Legacy Terrain Generator. Now, this went through a few iterations because our beta tester didn't quite agree that it actually was the Legacy Terrain. And they were right. They found a bug. So this is what you're normally used to. Flat. And if you clicked Random Terrain, you got a quilt. Let's be kind. It was a quilt. So I dug out the old Random Terrain Generator, which still has the ability to create these, but unlike the other one, you've got your flat bits back, which is, it gives you, you can't really identify and appreciate a mountain if it's all mountain. You want some sort of valleys and then some hills. And you'll also notice that the water is nice and available just beneath the surface where you wanted it all along. And if you random generate again, it does a little bit more than the Legacy one. It actually regulates the scale of the mountains as well. So as you keep modifying them, keep clicking random generate, the hills can be quite subtle hills or they can be quite big hills, just based on how many times you click this button. There was a bug where the hills just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and not getting smaller. Here's a good example. Look, on the floor, those hills are quite big, but you just have to keep clicking random generate just to get the one you want. And again, as you can see, the water's there readily available. Where you go to run. I think I've moved off center, so we may not be able to see. A little, oh yeah, we can see it. Now, some people have, they painted some water, then they went into the world and said, "Where's my water? This is absolutely ridiculous. I want my water back." All it is that your test game settings, the settings that you came in with from visual.ini, had water at 0. Just bang that up to 100, and you shouldn't have to worry about missing water ever again. Simple, but if you don't know about it, it can be quite frustrating. So there you go. You've got your original terrain generator back. May you enjoy it for many, many, many moons. And as you can see, it used to be a fixed range, which is vertical range of 6. Now I've done a random of up as low as 5, but as up to 9. So you get like bigger hills, and in some cases even smaller hills. I think down the road, it's on the voting board, but we'll have to wait till it gets to the top, having a little dialog box where you can sort of quickly change some seed values and some ranges, and have a quick wireframe preview of what you're going to have, and then if you like it, then click, and then it generates the big real one. I think that is definitely on the cards. We'll just have to wait till it gets upvoted. There was a really weird issue where if you actually reloaded a saved game in Standalone, the game would actually be about 20 points slower, which is like, what? Turns out when it reloaded a saved game, it just turned every object into clones, and that adverse has a hit on engine performance. So now it actually reloads the objects in the state that they were saved in. So that restores that, and so if you saw that in the previous version, my apologies, it's now been fixed in version 1.133. Update classic character scripts from the expansion pack. Yep, Small G did his usual trick and totally improved my scripts. And I really couldn't fault them. I went through them and I thought, oh my god, these are actually a lot better than mine. So hopefully Small G won't mind me replacing my scripts with his scripts, and you'll enjoy those in this update with the classic characters. Just drop them in and see them not freeze in mid-air when you try and kill them. Prevent the sky messing up in Standalone. Yeah, for some reason the Standalone exported the night sky, and then the night sky took precedence, so every time you're on your Standalone, it was at night, which is like, what's that about? So I just remove this export until we've got proper day-night cycles implemented, and then I can reintroduce that. So you should get your sky back now with future safe Standalone exports. Now saves out textures for internal LA and parent LA off data in the MS level textures. Yeah, there was some situation where the Morning Mountain Stroll level was built in a very old version of GameGuru, and the texture that was specified for the entities within that level was pulling from a different internal data source, and that would cause some characters and, say, the bunk bed thing just to have a black texture, which is like, oh, that's not right for a sample level that comes with GameGuru. So that was just a minor little fix. Also noticed that when you exported the Morning Mountain Stroll, the grass wasn't great, because even though high is good, it's a good compromise of performance and visuals, it didn't really match the Morning Mountain Stroll. So I've just made a blanket decision that now if you export and you set your export your Standalone and then set your graphics to high, you're actually going to get highest with grass, and that would make the grass look as good as it can be. But if you don't like that, all you've really got to do is go back into, let me go into GameGuru, go to Setup, go down to here. You see these are the settings for low, these are settings for medium, these are settings for high. All you're going to do is set this back to high, and then maybe set that to medium, and then you're back where you was, and it will remember that and it won't overwrite it in the future. So I think we're getting to the bottom quarter of this list. Added code to Lua. Right, I've reinstated. All you do is drop title.org into your default folder, and you get your Standalone music back. I'll just show you where that is. Titles bank, default. Just drop any org in the, call it title.org, and then it will play it automatically. The reason it does that is some code has now been added which detects for said org file and then plays it using the global sound system. So some people missed that feature, so we've just put it back in, but using the new commands, not fudging it like it was the last time. Fixed issue of distant path, but yeah, there was the earlier thing which speeded things up also made characters stutter. They no longer stutter. And the thing that disables them after a certain distance, you can completely switch it off by setting always active to yes. So you don't have to have the new performance improvement if you don't want. Increased AI deactivation range, so again that solves the stuttering issue. A further improvement to the random generator, which made it kind of work. There was an issue where if you was using depth of field, but you set SAO to 0, the depth of field would disappear. That bug's now been fixed. I've already introduced you specular modulation on a per entity basis. It was not easy. It caused lots of adds to the core graphics engine, but I felt it was worth it, and maybe opens the door for more per entity specific shader stuff. It's amazing how far we've got with GameGuru without having to do per entity anything within the shader. You have one shader that has overriding control of quite a lot of entities, and I think opening this door will allow us to do other things, like I said, the cube mapping and other stuff would open the door. The only option you had before this was to basically take entity underscore basic.fx, cut and paste it, and then make your own modified version of it. But that doesn't really future-proof yourself if you want some more improvements from us in the shaded department, which will come in the future. As you see on the voting board, there's quite a number of items related to rendering and improving the visuals. So we will definitely be working on some shader in the future. As I said, you can overexpose the specular. Characters, yeah, there were some situations where you could shoot zombies immediately in the head and they wouldn't have a chance to do the non-ragdoll animation. So that's been fixed. So it will actually always use its animation if you've not set it to ragdoll. And the last thing I did was the thing I showed you right at the beginning with the asylum floors. Clones and other zombies now stand on instead of in. A typical example of that would be if I just start with a flat world and add a piece of asylum, which let's say we have this corner piece. Zoom in for you. And then rotate it so we can see the floor. And then you grab yourself a zombie clone. You see how he'll always stand on the floor here. But the problem was that when you actually ran the game, his feet would actually be sunk in. But now he actually stays stood on the floor. You get close to him, and then he drops down off. So it actually respects that entity's solidity. So yeah, it'd be interesting to get a vote on whether I should on this update even default everything to highest. And this is what I always do. I set shadows to full. I drop ambience a bit and I increase that. You see already it looks... I don't want to get hit, you see. You see, it's exactly the same GameGuru, but it looks a lot better. And all I really did was set up the defaults to be a bit more darker on the shadows, a bit more contrast going on, a bit more specular, and critically setting all the shaders to highest. Be good to get a vote on whether I should just do that, just to... You know, some people are only using GameGuru for like 10 minutes. There's no way they would have actually discovered highest. Let alone the other billion features hiding in here. So that was the last one. So sorry for rabbiting on. I have, as per usual, exceeded my half-an-hour slot, but that's fine. I never really worry about that. But let's go to the questions, because I'm sure a lot of them have been piling up. It's best to get them all sorted out in one go. Now, I'm sorry for you've probably seen a double image now. So until I get my multi-monitor system back up and running, you just go have to enjoy this very unique view of the broadcasting itself. I'm getting nothing. Have we been had? To what are you referring? All good here, working fine here. Oh dear, no sound, no picture. Relog in, restart your Steam. All good here as well, all fine here. So that's some people are having problems getting onto the Twitch, but some people are okay. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that this video will not be no sound and no visuals. So we'll get to the end and then fingers crossed everyone else gets to see it. Here we've got a question mark. I like question marks, as everyone knows from the live chat. Lee loves question marks because I can just skim down to find a question mark. Could we have a terrain off within the editor so we don't have to script it for an indoor game standalone? Good idea, but where do you put it? Yeah, because there isn't really anything... I did have an idea a couple of years ago called global settings, and it would literally be a little, you see this little measuring thing, which is how much memory you're using. Underneath it, the little planet Earth, and you click it, and that would be like global settings for the level. But as you see, you know, we save straight out to standalone, we've got no per level settings, so where would you really set it? And that's really the problem. It's like, in order to have this feature, we'd have to come up with a whole new UI thing. And I'm not sure it's time to be adding anything. I think the general census is that we should have core features that are clearly missing and more stuff on the voting list completed in quicker time. So that's where it will go, some sort of global settings item. But then yes, wouldn't it be great if you could actually set the sky, the terrain, whether it's there or not, all from the editor before you click play. there has been arguments that we should actually have all of those slider settings in the editor, which is still also an option. But it's just one of those things. Maybe the next thing is, where do we put that? So this opens it up into the community for debate. Zombies first thing in the morning, absolutely. A zombie a day keeps the zombie doctor away. Lure command high terrain, yeah, but he wants it within the editor. So conversation, people like the specular and they're calling it spectacular. Thank you very much. No question marks. I guess everyone's very happy so far. Lots of small g is the man. He is the man. And he is a man. Would it be possible to have entities switch their shaders from low to high according to distance to add performance? That may not improve performance actually, because what happens is when you switch shaders to render all the geometry within that shader switch is very expensive. It's a huge context switch, and it's like lots of stuff has to be reset and replaced, and then you can render with that new shader. If you had like, how many would it be? 9 more shaders? Well, let's work it out. Let's run this demo again. Well, let's call it a demo. Let's call it a zombie in a building. Let's call it zombie in a piece of building. We look at terrain. We've got 4 there. We've got 3 there. And we got 4 there. If I set it to highest, it's highest for all the entities that use that terrain shader. In order to have different techniques at different levels, you know, there might be a way we could actually group them by technique. You could actually, I'm thinking about it. You could still have one shader, but then render a lot of draws for highest, then set the technique to high, and then render those, and then medium, Would it improve the performance? I have no idea. I've done some brilliant things that have yielded 0 performance. So you got to wonder. That's a lot of work to group all the stuff in real time. As you remember, I mean, if you take this zombie and make another version of him, or not. Did I just? Yeah, I just crashed my engine. Well, I'm going to write that one down. See, that's why it's the beta, guys and gals. So what did I do? F9 zombie clone. Okay, so to make my point higher up, if I put this, where am I? If I put this building, something strange is happening. Let's start from the very beginning. I put this zombie down. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, let's start from absolute scratch. As I was saying, if you drop 3 things down, one near the player, one medium distance, and one far away, but then move the player all the way around them to the other end, you'd end up with a situation where the entities would have to be sorted in reverse order. So if I just take anything, like this tent, dink, 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 and this one here, you would say set that to lowest shader, this to medium, this to highest. If I then in the game moved around, suddenly this would be highest, this would be medium, this would be lowest. So you'd have to dynamically sort the entities, then group them by technique, and then render them. And you might save performance by having a simpler shader to render an object, but then you would have more performance in having to sort all the objects and keep resorting them 30, 60, 90 times every second. In addition, you'll have what's called entity pop. And I'll show you what that looks like, because I've found a barrel that's been quite obstinate. I've not got around to setting the load levels, which is the reason why it pops. But you saw it then. As I move away, see how it changes its shaders from a nice smooth surface into this sort of ribbed, and the ribs is because it's a different geometry. It's completely different 3D polygon soup. And just as you see that popping, you'll also see that popping not in terms of geometry but in terms of pixel clarity. I'll take, for example, let's look at that one. I'll go to lowest, then medium, then highest. You see the pop between highest and medium? That's pretty brutal. So you'd actually see that all the time you was moving closer. If I was here now on highest, let's face it, this is where we all want to be, and certainly where all the modern engines have just put on. They're not really doing low and medium anymore. Only antiquated farts like me still want to support Windows XP and shader Model 2. But as you get closer, it's a nice transition to the tent. Now I'll give you an example of, let's say you was this far away and your entity was medium, and as you walked closer it popped into that. It's not unheard of and it still happens in modern games, but you'd have to be so far away to actually hide that pop effect. But I'm not dismissing it. I think it's a really clever idea, and if shaders are really hurting your performance, and by dropping the shader technique down as they get further in the distance, and that you can control when the entity pops down its shader technique, yeah, I think there might be room for that. So definitely post that on the forums, see if we can get some community backing for it, and we'll see if we can have a play. So just seeing where we was up to. Some good reviews have started popping up. Yeah, I'm really appreciative of that fact. I think a lot of the recent flood of reviews, I think the last 30 days, 50% of the reviews have been negative. But most of them have really been about the, I don't know, the sort of the scourge that is GameGuru, allowing asset flipped games directly onto Steam Greenlight. So they're basically coming back to GameGuru and blaming us for people who just basically took a level, changed the title screen, and then shipped it out as a Steam game. And there's nothing really we can do about that. There really isn't. We just have to live with it. I lived back in the 8-bit days where Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit was responsible for hundreds and hundreds of games. Hundreds of them. Every month a cover disc would have a Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit game on it. And I think eventually the audience got a little bit tired of that as well. I'm hoping that by continuing to work on GameGuru's customizable features, that games can get more and more unique, and we don't have to resort to the asset flipping, and we're more about, you know, procedurally generating stuff and more custom scripts and unique graphics and more ways to bring graphics in. So we're gonna, would it be possible to have entities switch the shaders? Yeah, okay, so we got past that point. Select a shader to use per object in Lua. In Lua, per object. See, shaders are really icky things. By switching and swapping shaders in real time, it's probably one of the slowest things you can do. It definitely wouldn't help performance. After a crash, you need to minimize then maximize to fix that bug. Ooh, great stuff. I'm writing that one down. Where's the pen gone? Ah, it rolled off. Minimize, maximize. The reason I like that for the what would it be called, the mouse entity bug, is that reveals what I would call a workaround, and with a workaround I can find the root cause. When I find the root cause, I can actually fix the bug. So that's extremely useful to get that tidbit. To only have got the first part as a report, it's useful enough if I can reproduce it, but having a sort of a, well, this is how it can get round it, it actually basically makes the bug fix glow. Very easy to fix it when I've got that little workaround also tagged onto the bug report. Just something you might want to know about from one coder to another. It looks like a great update. Thanks very much. Everyone looks like they're happy with it. The last post, when for? 3 question marks, 3 exclamation marks. Do you like my screen? The tunnel effect. I do apologise, but you know, you've never seen that before in the 50-odd broadcasts that you've had on GameGuru, so why not? Let's enjoy looking at the time go backwards. Like I said at the beginning, I think I'm going to do it for this week. I'm hoping the beta testers don't come back with anything horrid. There's only 1 or 2 outstanding issues that I'm still waiting on feedback for. But once those have come in, and basically the decree that I've put out to the beta testers is if this is no worse than version 1.132 and the new features are okay, then we should release this week so you can get access to it, start playing with it, and more importantly that I can get on to finishing the EBE, which is very close to being in a state where we can not only beta test it but put it out as a public preview so people can see what we've been playing with. It will not by any means be comprehensive. It will not by any means replace 3D modeling. But what it will do is allow you to start building things within your world without depending on a complete item. So instead of saying, well, I've only got this, the nearest people could do with the EBE was say this, which would be set that up as a grid, and then you'd set up a little floor like so, and then you go back and you say, okay, well, I'll have this, and you see you could sort of make a building sort of, but not really, and that was as close as you could get. But even that was fun. But wouldn't it be great if you could actually construct quite large structures out of blocks, then save them, use them in different levels, put them in your games, and then when someone walks into your game, they'll see a building they've never seen before. Be able to wander around rooms they've never seen before without waiting for stuff to appear in the store or for another DLC. Kind of warming away from any more DLCs. I think Steam community have pretty much decided that DLCs are generally bad and are some sort of con. So I'm certainly not encouraging my brain to think anymore in terms of DLC. The downside of that, of course, is there'll not really be any more official content from us. You'll be able to get everything else now from the store, or if you want to import it yourself through future importing features that we'll be bringing in. Because we're not really being thanked for it. We have probably about 8 gigabytes worth of game assets now, and we're still having mud slung at us. So what's the point of adding another 2 gigabytes of assets, I ask you? You know, so maybe we'll add really high quality stuff, maybe for a specific demo. I mean, if you saw the sci-fi mission to Mars, I really like that DLC because it really wrapped up a whole theme with a nice little level and some new gadgets and stuff. So I really like that, and if we were to do another DLC, then it would probably be along those lines. But just, you know, like a Mega Pack 4, a Mega Pack 5, I don't think you need that now. I don't think, if anyone, a newcomer to GameGuru doesn't really need a DLC. With the expansion pack providing, plus to the default content, over 3 gigabytes of stuff, I mean, surely that's enough to be getting on with. And there's no reason then to complain about DLCs being appended to the product. But again, maybe it's just a Steam community thing, who knows. So, there's a couple more posts. We've got 5 more minutes. I may as well fill up the hour, as is my tradition. No, I'll either finish on half an hour or I'll finish on an hour. There isn't really any point just finishing halfway between those two markers. I'm going to divide the universe by 0, am I? Okay. I may just do that. Just for kicks. But only when, you know, when we're ready to move on to the next realm of existence. Going to be released this week, question mark. It is my plan to release it this week in some form. Might be a public beta, or I might just bite the bullet and release it all as the real public, everyone gets it at the same time. I'm hoping me and my internal beta testers can make sure that nothing horrible lies within this update, and I am going to do a big test all the way through, every single button, every single app, every single help, every single everything, to make sure that everything's where it should be before I go release, including the F9 thing that I saw, cloning that zombie in F9. I think that I've seen that before. I just thought it was an apparition, but now I've seen it again. That'll give me something to do later on this evening. You don't get much content with other engines on Steam. We have enough. Well, I couldn't agree more. But it seems when you use GameGuru for 15 minutes, you don't really get to appreciate the vastness of the engine and how much content is available. And I've even tried updating the product page to really bring that information forward, but even that's not enough. So I am always open to suggestions how we can improve that perception, which I think is probably one of the big failings right now with GameGuru on Steam, the perception of it, and people not really seeing what it is when they look at the videos and then read the description and then look at the screenshots and then install and run it. It's not really getting itself across, I don't think. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're doing everything right and we're just, you know, fighting a unwinnable battle. Can you show the EBE a little bit? Well, we've got 3 minutes left. It will take me 2 minutes to waffle to goodbye, so I don't think you want 1 minute of EBE. There are previous broadcasts that you can find on our main website, which goes into quite a lot of detail on the EBE. So you can actually check those out, but I will certainly do another EBE broadcast once I've furthered it along. I want to be able the ability to customize the textures within the plate, for example. I'd really like to show that. The ability to save the constructions across levels and be able to save them for future building projects. I think that'd be a great broadcast to show on. So you'll probably get that. Last 2 ones, yes. Myself, always good stuff. Well, I actually quite like the DLCs, but it seems, I don't know, there's some stigma about if you have to buy a DLC, it makes a mockery of the main product or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what people are thinking. AI updates, yes, after the EBE, if I just jump back to this list. In fact, not that one. You've already got them. These are the ones you want. And view results. This is our current scoreboard. Maybe this should be a feature of the closing of the broadcast, showing the current scores, George Dawes. We're currently working on the EBE, as you know, but it looks like the most overwhelming next thing is AI. Specifically, enemies and characters to navigate stairs all by themselves, stand on roofs, stand on first and second floors of buildings, and then wander around with correct pathfinding. That's the crux of that. But in addition, I will be adding lots of other AI stuff that you may have recognised from other games, like people diving out of the way of rockets and running for cover even though you didn't tell them to. So we'll be adding those things in as well. And then, of course, number 2 spot is menu editing, which basically boils down to no longer will you all have the same title screen. You'll actually have a new dialogue which allows you to drag in images, buttons, sounds, flow, and you can have a lot more customizable menus right up front rather than having to hack it into script. So that's something to look forward to. But I think AI is quite safe at 11,000 versus 9,900. So unless anything radically changes, you're going to get AI after the EBE. So that is almost entirely an hour. I only mean to do half an hour, so you got 2 for the price of 1. I hope you've enjoyed it. Sorry for the delay between broadcasts. This will go out to YouTube very soon, so you can find it later on if you didn't get to watch it live. As per usual, I will be raiding the forum thread on broadcast for future ideas. You'll find it in the product chat. It's a sticker. It's called Twitch Sessions. Please send us your request if you want me to talk about something specific. But until next time, and I won't tell you when that is, so you'll find out about it because I'll post it on the forum or I'll make a tweet about it. I am on Twitter. Is it Twitter? Yes. Lee Bamber TGC. So you'll find me on there and you'll find out that's when I'll actually announce my broadcasts. But until next time, I hope you've enjoyed it and I shall cue that music.